Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a completely mind-bending yet incredibly ambitious framework from the world of theoretical physics. We're looking at a fascinating paper by independent researcher Jafar Golchin, which introduces something called Foundational Substrate Quantum Mechanics. Essentially, it's a radical, purely geometric derivation of the universe. And get this, it aims to solve literally some of the deepest, most persistent mysteries of physics. We're talking everything from quantum entanglement to the exact, precise masses of fundamental particles.
But to really understand why this paper is so audacious, we kind of have to look at where modern physics currently stands. Right now, the standard model of particle physics, along with our standard cosmological models, they're undeniably successful, right? But here's the catch. They rely on roughly 32 experimentally measured parameters. We're talking about things like particle masses, coupling constants, and mixing angles. The big problem? Their fundamental origins are entirely unexplained. We actually have no idea why they have the exact values they do. We basically just measure them and plug them into our equations. They act like a kind of mathematical duct tape, just holding all of our models together.
But what if you could just rip that duct tape right off? Well, this revolutionary paper argues exactly that. It claims we only need exactly 8 fundamental inputs to perfectly derive the entire universe, with absolutely zero free parameters. No fine-tuning, no arbitrary plugging in of mass values. The idea is that once you set these 8 inputs, literally every other physical constant and quantum phenomenon naturally cascades right out of the math.
Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, the Foundational Substrate Theory.
Let's dive into this incredibly dense, but honestly super elegant framework to see how it supposedly replaces all that quantum magic with sheer geometry. So, what exactly is this foundational substrate? The big idea here is that reality begins with a dynamic, omnipresent foundational substrate. Think of it like a continuous scalar field, essentially an invisible, underlying ocean of energy that exists literally everywhere. In fact, space and time themselves emerge from it. The substrate possesses intrinsic geometric properties, like a specific amount of warping and a fractal structure. So in this framework, particles aren't tiny little billiard balls flying around. They are literal geometric wrinkles or excitations in this underlying substrate.
And here are those exact 8 fundamental inputs. Notice how incredibly basic they are. 3 of them are just pure mathematical constants. You've got Euler's number, pi, and the square root of 2. Then we have the speed of light, Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the proton-electron mass ratio. But the true star of the whole show is number 4, the strain parameter. This number describes the intrinsic geometric warping of the substrate itself. And according to the author, using just these 8 inputs, you can theoretically calculate the mass of every other particle and force in existence. That is a real game changer if it's true.
Moving right along to Section 2, solving the greatest mysteries. To really see how this rewrites physics, we have to look at the classic paradoxes. Things like Schrödinger's cat, wave-particle duality, and spooky action at a distance. Traditionally, quantum mechanics tells us that particles exist in this fuzzy probability wave until they are measured, and then suddenly the wave mysteriously collapses. But foundational substrate theory throws that out. Instead of a mysterious wave function collapse, it introduces something called quantum rapidity. This is a fundamental kinematic parameter. Basically, a measure of how fast an entity is moving relative to the background substrate. And crucially, this specific physical property dictates whether that entity acts as a wave or a localized particle. And this concept completely physicalizes wave-particle duality. Think about it like this. When an entity, like a photon, is propagating through space, it has high rapidity. It's moving super fast relative to the substrate. In this state, it naturally expands out into a wave, which allows it to interfere with itself. But when it actually interacts with a detector, that interaction physically slows it down, lowering its rapidity. The wave literally condenses into a localized particle. It's almost exactly like freezing expanded water vapor into a solid, condensed block of ice.
And here's the real kicker. This mechanism claims to completely resolve the infamous measurement problem. There is absolutely no mystical role for a conscious observer here. A measurement is just a physical interaction that induces a rapid drop in rapidity, condensing the entity. This means Schrödinger's cat is never dead and alive simultaneously in macroscopic reality. That superposition, it only ever exists mathematically in that rapidity parameter, never in the actual physical state of the cat itself.
Furthermore, this neatly explains away Einstein's famous spooky action at a distance. In this new theory, quantum entanglement emerges simply because 2 particles share an infinite rapidity state.
At infinite rapidity, which is essentially the speed of light within the substrate, internal time completely stops passing for that shared state. Because time isn't passing for the entangled system, any correlations between the particles appear totally instantaneous to us on the outside. But absolutely no superluminal, faster-than-light signaling is actually happening. It's just an incredibly elegant geometric illusion.
Now for Section 3, our layered cosmic onion. Shifting our perspective from the quantum level up to the macro scale, the paper takes the mathematical implications of this substrate geometry and applies it to cosmology. And it reveals a massive and frankly mind-blowing claim about the very dimensions of our universe. Get ready for this one. Our daily experience obviously tells us we live in a three-dimensional spatial universe, right? But cosmological analysis of the substrate's geometric properties reveals that the effective dimension of our observable space is only 1.9285. That literally means we only observe about 64% of our three-dimensional space. The remaining 36% of spatial reality is fundamentally hidden from us. No way, right? So you might be wondering, where is the rest of that reality hiding? Well, the paper argues the universe is actually partitioned by immense refractive barriers, functioning basically like an infinite layered cosmic onion. And we only live in one specific layer. Other fundamental particles literally reside in totally different cosmic layers based on their extreme mass scales. The everyday quarks that make up our bodies, they live in layer 4. Heavier top and bottom quarks, they exist in layer 6. And those ultralight active neutrinos are pushed all the way out to layer 7, 8, and 9. Which brings us to Section 4, the ultimate reality test. Now, theoretical physics, especially when we start talking about hidden cosmic onion layers, gets really abstract really fast. So how do we physically prove we live inside this geometric layered substrate? What you should take away from this explainer is that any good theory absolutely must be falsifiable. And the author totally delivers on that front, providing rigorous, falsifiable predictions for near-future experiments. This completely grounds these wild theories in hard empirical science. For instance, the theory predicts an exact mass for a particle called the lightest glue ball. It also predicts a very specific signature of power suppression in the cosmic microwave background, something the upcoming Simons Observatory is going to look for. And it requires strict, right down to the decimal point adherence to a mathematical law it calls zero discrepancy condition. Basically, if any of these are proven wrong, the whole theory falls apart. But the most immediate test, it lies right here in this number. Using only that foundational geometric strain parameter we talked about earlier, the theory derives an exact mass for a hypothetical particle called the sterile neutrino, exactly 25.5 kiloelectron volts. Not a range, an exact number. If this is found, this particle perfectly fits the profile for dark matter, completely resolving yet another of physics' greatest mysteries using nothing but sheer substrate geometry. The cool thing is, experiments like Katrin and Echo are actively hunting for these sterile neutrinos right now. So we really might not have to wait long to see if this theory actually holds water. But as we wait for experimental physics to test these stunning predictions, the foundational substrate theory leaves us with a truly profound final thought. If everything, from the light we see to gravity to the actual quarks inside our bodies, is just a localized, wave-like geometric excitation residing in the fourth layer of an infinite fractal cosmic onion, what exactly does that make you?